Today's podcast is brought to you by the Hounds of Baskerville, the traditional barbershop and shaving parlour. Looking a bit scruffy? Got a big date? Maybe you got an important meeting? Go online and book at hounds.sg. Our next guest has fought in one championships in MMA and is now a professional boxer. There's something about Kirstie Ganaway. How did you even get into MMA in the first place?
So I actually started when my brother got into boxing first when I was a lot younger. He was kind of he was a really naughty kid basically, okay. But on another level. I think he had been suspended from his second school, probably got by that point, maybe I don't go there, but a notice of arrest. But that's when my dad kind of panicked and didn't know what to do. And my dad is from Australia. He grew up in Kalgoorlie. I don't know if you know.
It's a mining town, no?
It is, yeah. He used to describe it as a cowboy town.
Yeah, I understand what he's saying.
And so he boxed a little bit when he was younger. And he felt like that kind of shaped him up a little bit. So he thought, okay, he'll put my brother into that. And me and my brother were super close. Usually whatever he did, I wanted to do too.
Okay.
And it's when I saw him compete amateur, that just totally inspired me. And yeah. And I remember he kept convincing me, come to the gym with me. I'll teach you what I know. And he did. He literally brought me to the gym one day. And I just never stopped since then. It was as straight as that. And I went from doing no sport...
I was going to ask.
Sport.
So sorry, you never did any sport before?
I was a teenage fatty, and I did everything I could do to avoid PE class. I was one of the kids always forging notes to get out of PE class. So yeah, living off fast food, it was terrible. Yeah. So
and then you walk into the gym with your brother, and just keep walking in.
Yeah, I went in. Started in this little gym out in the East Coast. Mm-hmm. So he just kind of taught me what I knew, and I kind of had this routine down where I was kind of practicing the things he taught me, and sometimes with the guys and the coaches there as well. But yeah, and the moment I stepped in there, I think it was after seeing him fight, I was like, I want to fight too. So I went in knowing I wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. I didn't sort of go in to lose weight or get fit. I didn't have any concept of that in my mind. It was just I want to fight. I want to do that.
Well, what about it? Watching him, what about it attracted you to it? Was it that everyone cheered for him? Was it that he won? Was it that he got to beat someone up, or that he got beat?
I think it was kind of it was one of those things where it was deep down something that I found very intriguing, but it only came to my attention then because I'd been a big WWF fan for the longest time before that.
Can we cut the camera?
Yes. But okay, this is when I thought WWF was real. I'm talking I started watching it when I was 7 or 8. Okay. So I was convinced
the whole time that it was real.
Exactly. Yeah.
Santa.
It wasn't too a lot older. And I don't know, I was already very captivated by fighting, and I just thought it was such a cool thing to do. I don't know. I'd always get a thrill out of watching fights or hearing about it. But
did you watch kung fu movies and stuff like that?
So that's the thing, not really.
Right.
WWF is my earliest
combatish.
Yeah, that I was super into, and I remember being heartbroken when I found out it was all staged, and then understanding they're making the blood come, stuff like that. But yeah, it started there. But
And how old were you then? So this first day you walk into the gym?
I was 15.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 15. And my brother had convinced me to go because he was actually leaving Singapore because he was just graduating and leaving. And I was so upset about that he wasn't going to be living with us anymore. Uh-huh. And so when he finally kept asking me, he's like, come on, just come. He kept trying to pursue me to come with him. And I was like, fine, okay, I'll go this time. Because it was more that concept of training that I wasn't into. Because again, I wasn't a sporty person.
Yeah.
So, but then when I went and I realized how difficult it actually is. I remember he's the first person that ever punched me. And he punched me in the face with the glove. And I just had blacked out for a moment. I was like, God damn, that's how it feels. I think
You're
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think no one really anticipates how it's going to be getting hit until you do.
Yeah.
I've noticed a lot of people have overconfidence about it. For me, I really didn't know. And he's like, let's do a sparring in the first week of being there, just so you know how it feels, because he wanted me to know how it felt to get hit. And I was like, wow.
But that's the best way.
Yes, it is.
Like I don't know, like growing up, like I got like hit in the head in sports, like just, you know, in rugby or something like that. Like, so you kind of know what that impact is. But yeah, even when the first time I did like a kickboxing lesson, there was sparring.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I don't know, it's just better to know, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do agree with you. It is the best way. It's kind of like because I don't think anyone likes to get hit, or if you do, I wonder what's wrong with those people.
You're
but
mental.
but you don't want to get hit, and that becomes your motivation. What do I do to not get hit and hit the other person? That's always the mindset I try to have. So it's almost like this game-like attitude, making fun out of it. And the only thing that's important is, I mean, I take it now to another level, but it's getting hit and training, but in a controlled environment. Because if you're just getting hit in the head all the time, taking a lot of impact, that's also not smart. You're not going to have a long career doing that. So that's what I realized, what makes or breaks a lot of fighters comes down to their team and how safe they're being about everything. Because if they're just throwing you in the deep end all the time and letting you get beat up, you're not going to stay in the game for a long time.
No.
So
yeah, like I did train at a place in UK, and like I was, you know, I have a regular job, right? Like, and I go there at lunch. Like, I'll go back to work with a headache sometimes, and it's just like, it's just not good.
Yeah. And again, now at a professional level, you kind of, I have to be kind of prepared for that to happen, but it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And again, and I always tell myself, the day comes where I'm taking a lot of damage, you know, then it's time to start rethinking or replanning what I'm doing, because something's not right. And again, it comes down, I think, to the team, the culture of the team, because I've trained in teams and seen teams where, you know, they don't take safety as seriously as they should. It's kind of like, a lot of people like to say it's old school, but I think you can be old school and tweak it and still make it work. But, you know, they believe in throwing you into the shark tank and see how you're going to do. And then, and it's like.
But it's like, it is old school, but I think like, I don't know, there's a balance, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like your brain can only handle so much, right? It's like a tire on the road. It's got so many revolutions, and it can only take so many punctures. If a puncture is a knockout and you can repair the tire,
for sure,
after a while you need to throw that tire away,
for
right?
sure. Yeah. And when it's like another part of your body and you can kind of cope, but now you're talking your brain, so that's permanent damage.
I got a shoulder surgery.
Yes.
Oh, that sucks, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting a brain surgery.
Yes.
That's different level.
Yeah, no, it is. And because when you get hit a lot, your brain literally gets inflamed.
Yeah, right.
And so if that keeps happening over a period of time, you can imagine the damage that is causing to certain parts of your brain.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't know if you've ever met someone who's been hit to the point where they become quite irritable. Like, they have a very short fuse. They're quite easy to agitate, because that's literally, I can't remember the name of it, but I actually see a sports psychologist who specializes in looking at brain mapping, brain scans.
Wow.
So that's what he does with me, and he was explaining this to me as well. So like a lot of people who have had accidents, even with a big impact to the head, they can generally be quite irritable. Actually, my dad is a perfect example of that, because he had he got in a motorcycle accident where he collided with a bus. Right. And really, he's just on it. He gets so upset about the smallest things, like, and you see him get upset about it, and you know it's not something he's going to worry about a few minutes later, but in the moment, it's like an impulsive reaction.
Yes.
So
yeah. So
it's
there's a hangover from the initial trauma, right?
Yes.
That can become permanent.
Yes. Yeah. So it's things like that I always try to stay mindful for. And yeah.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. And I mean, well, for me in particular, I fight at a very light division, 52 kg, although I moved up already from 48.
What weight, what division is that?
So for MMA, I was fighting in 48. That's atom weights. Okay. But for boxing, I moved up to 52. That's light flyweight.
Light fly. Yeah. Okay.
So 115 pounds for the Americans. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't know pounds.
I know. It gets confusing.
So you go into the gym with your brother, but basically you end up a pro MMA fighter.
Yeah.
With one FC, which
Yeah.
is, I don't know, it's one championships. It's not
Yeah.
FC anymore. Who a lot of people will know about, right?
Yes. Yeah.
How was that like, going into, this cage with a whole lot of other people looking, and you're standing across from somebody who wants to fucking hurt you.
Yeah.
In a situation that it's rare, but you could die.
Yep. I mean, that's the reality. You go in that's how I think anyways. I always tell myself it's a life or death situation. Although most of the time it won't bring you that close, but
No.
I put myself in that mindset. But it was, to go into that moment, because it was quite interesting, but I was trying to compete MMA at an amateur level before that. Mm-hmm. And it just always struggled to work out. I either couldn't get the right connections, couldn't find the right team. I was getting injured, so I was kind of training on and off. And that amateur fight was kind of never happening. And it was when I met the guys that won and got presented this opportunity to join the team, and they immediately signed me to go pro. And I was a little bit like, oh damn, like I didn't
This is really happening now.
Yeah, I was like, so I didn't have the amateur experience going into it, which was a really big step. And I think it made my team equally as nervous, to be fair, because they didn't know how I was gonna react in that environment. I always say, like, you never know how someone's going to perform until you put them in that environment. It's something you can't practice for. Like dealing with the nerves, dealing with the anxiety, trying to get a good night's sleep the night before or nights before. That's the hardest part. And no one really teaches you how to deal with that. It's kind of something you learn on the go.
Yeah.
But again, so it's an interesting story. But I was kind of going back and forth with the anxiety and the nerves. There were definitely a lot of times in that fight camp where I was like, I want to quit. I can't do this. Like a panic.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks before the fight was when my dad had that accident.
Oh, right.
Yes, and he got put into a coma. It was a life or death situation. It was really intense.
Oh.
And I remember when I got that call, I think the team, they didn't call off the fight, but they were like, we're not going to call it off, but we're just waiting. You make that call whenever you need to, because obviously they had total respect for what was going on.
That's good.
But so 2 weeks out, I stopped training. I was just like, because this happened in Indonesia, so I had to go over to Indonesia and organize, have my dad flown back here and be operated and stuff on. Sure. So it was very nerve-wracking. And so my weight shot up, and that's the first time I'd ever cut weight in my life, because I've never had to cut weight for competition before. I was always heavier. So I was always the lightest one in the room.
Okay.
So this was my first time cutting weight. And I remember, like, it got to the point, like, in my head, the fight wasn't happening. It was cancelled. But my brother had flown in from Australia to be with me to support the whole situation with my dad. And I remember it was him. He's like, so is your fight happening? And I was like, no, I've decided I'm not going to do it anymore. I feel like it's too stressful now. And he's like, Kirstie, are you serious? You came all this way. You're, like, so close to it. He's like, this is like what you set out to do, and now you're going to stop. And he was like, he gave me the best advice, because he's like, if dad wakes up, you're going to regret that you didn't do it. But if he passes away, like, you couldn't have done anything to stop that. So whatever you decide to do, that's not going to change. But if he wakes up, he's going to be in more regret that you didn't do one thing you kind of went out to do. And so I was like, God damn, okay, so I guess I have to do this.
Lights back on.
Yes, put on the sauna suit, go start losing the weight. And it was like, it was kind of hectic. Again, it was the first time that I ever dropped to 48 kilos.
How much did you have to lose?
I think I started walking around at least 55, but I was kind of like a not very lean one then. Yeah.
But that's still a large percentage of the body of your body
especially
at that
weight.
Yeah. I mean.
And during that week, I was just eating whatever anyone was bringing to me. So yeah, I wasn't prepared. I didn't do all the hyperhydration and stuff like that. I didn't have time for it.
Yeah.
So it was just losing the weight in whatever weight I could. And yeah, and when I went into that fight, so that's what was very interesting, because I was so almost overwhelmed emotionally by that situation, because my dad was still in the coma when I was going there.
As in, when you walked into the ring, he was still in a coma?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was really crazy. And it was so overwhelming. I feel like it was just a very emotional time. And I remember just being in a mindset where I was like, you're finally doing something that you want to do and kind of not letting anything else get in the way. And if anything, I feel like I was so like hyper focused.
Right.
Like it was the most focused I've almost ever been in my life.
Even compared to like now and other fights you've had since, just the emotion coming from different angles and...
Yeah, well, now I find I've learned how to go into the zone quite easily. I've kind of understood how to do that. But yeah, then it was more overwhelmed and just... I was just like, oh my God, I was overwhelmed to the point I was kind of sick of it and like, okay, nothing's going to stop me now. Like, I'm going to go in and like kill whoever's in front of me. Like, it was that mindset. Like, it was almost like I would say it's like an out of body experience, because really until the referee, because I finished in what did I finish in? Armbar in the triangle. And when he cut, it's like I snapped back, came back into my body again. It was really weird. I remember even before the fight starting, I was getting a bit aggressive and a bit hyped up in my corner saying, calm down. Like, you know, you're getting too...
Well, you were going to take it out on your opponent, basically.
Almost, yeah, something like that. So, and again, I never experienced that. And it was just problem after problem. I remember my opponent came in 4 kg over. And again, and I was pissed. I'm like, damn, I lost all this weight, went through all this crap. And they're like, look, she came in over, so we're probably going to put off the fight. I'm like... They're like, unless you want to go through with it. I'm like, let's just do it at this point. Like, really, let's just do it. So it's like... Get
it over and done with almost, right?
Yeah, but I really went in with that attitude, like, you know, I'm not going to leave here without a win, and chasing it and chasing the finish. And I think it's the first time I really switched into that mode and realized how important it actually became. So
maybe, like, what was going on, like with your father, like, kind of helped you. That's him now.
I'll turn it
I can
off.
hear you talking about me. No, yeah. Shit, I don't know. Mine's probably on as well.
Oh, it's okay.
Damn you.
I don't know. I don't even know where it is. It's over there. No, I don't need it. But if it rings, yeah, like maybe dealing with all that stuff, like actually, like is a distraction from actually what you were doing. Allowed you to kind of put the fight to the side. You're concentrating on something else, and then it culminates in like what happened. And then every fight moving forward is like, well, I've done it now, and I did it through a traumatic time in my family's life. Like every other fight's easier in a way.
Actually, it's funny you say that, because even going through my most recent camp, because you were at that fight, so I hadn't fought in over, I think, about 3 years, because I got injured, and then COVID happened, so no events, none of that stuff.
But that's nothing compared to your first one.
I know, but like it was like I don't like to say the camp was like a hell, because like there's problems in every fight camp, honestly, but it was hard. This camp was hard. There was a lot of things going on, and I got sick. I got the flu 1 week before the fight.
Okay.
And that, like, it kind of touched me for a moment, because I'm like, damn, I'm so excited here to make a comeback. And like I had to go on flu meds, and that killed my cardio. And I was really upset about that. I'm like, damn, like worked so hard to get to this moment, and now I don't know that I can perform. And I was like, hang on. And that's when I go back to that time. I'm like, you went through fights and fight camps and these situations, and you made it work. So 100%, this is going to be easy. It's going to be a walk in the park. And I really was like, yeah, like don't forget that. Yeah. Like you did that already. You've been through that hellish moment. So this is gonna be nothing. All you did is get a flu and whatever, and you don't feel bad. So just had to switch on. And I was like, suddenly it made that problem look so small, and it helped me, if anything.
That's what I think.
And I was like, just trust the process. Take a couple days to rest. If anything, that's gonna help you, and you're gonna like do fine on the day.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like other than someone being someone so close to you, such as your father, being in a coma. You know, God forbid. There's only a few things worse than being in a coma, right?
Yeah,
like it's
for sure.
You know, the negative thing that happens after a coma, or, you know, like there's not many other things in life that can be a more hardcore complication that's on your shoulders as you walk into the ring ever again in your professional career, right?
For sure, yeah. So again,
it's like a gift in a twisted way.
Exactly. I do see it as that. And also because, again, as a kid, I feel like my biggest weakness was always lacking the self-esteem or the confidence to fulfill something I set out to do. Like I was always kind of an underachiever. Don't shoot for something big because, you know, you're going to suck at it anyways. That kind of attitude.
Right.
So it was kind of like the first major thing.
Were you a goth or something?
Not really. I was kind of like in a punk rock, and some people say I was an emo kid sometimes. I don't know. I didn't like to accept that, but maybe a little bit. And yeah, kind of like that. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to like enjoy life and do whatever was day by day and not really give a damn about anything. So it was cool to finally care about something, because I mean, ultimately that makes you kind of feel a bit vulnerable, doesn't it? So for me, it was like that. Like, damn, I'm setting out to do this thing.
Well, yeah, what happens
and you don't know how it's going to go. And it's funny. I find that things like that, like the mental, is what can really make or break a person in fighting. I say fighting, but actually anything. And yeah, I guess I was fortunate enough to learn a lot of key concepts or principles and values in life through fighting. And that was one of them. Because like I've seen fighters who train and perform amazingly in camp, but you put them in the environment or something goes a little wrong or puts them out of their comfort zone, and it can really break them. Yeah. So having that kind of like mental agility and learn to just deal with what's coming and stay focused and keep your eye on the prize, I find that preparing for a fight pushes that to like the ultimate limit. Because again, something's gonna go wrong every camp. I do believe it.
Yeah, it's never gonna be perfect,
an injury,
right?
Personal life, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just talking to someone the other day who did like a little amateur fight, and like, yeah, I thought he did great, but he's like, yeah, I didn't perform, didn't get enough sleep, problems with family, and I'm just like, like that's our life. That's what we're dealing with all the time, and you just have to make it work. You have to show up. You have to switch on. The moment you start to make excuses and get negative, you're finished.
Yeah, you're already losing.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, not enough sleep. I had a shit sleep last night.
Oh, totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Family problems, like they're things that everyone goes through. Everyone has them, right? But it's just different when like you're doing all this preparation for this one thing, which also happens to be like a brutal, violent time you're about to have and share with one other person that wants to hurt you.
And because sleep changes everything, like, I mean, physically in terms of recovery. But again, coming back to the sports psychologist, his name's Santiago. He works with a company called Mind Lab. So one of the first things he recognized when looking at my mind map, my brain map, is that he can see the fatigue. And when you're fatigued, he's like, in a sport like boxing where your reactions are everything, like your brain involuntarily will shut down for seconds at a time.
What sort of fatigue? Like
just general fatigue, like I'd say a physical fatigue, not getting enough sleep, usually because of training, your nervous system being too overwhelmed because, again, of the training or the anxiety of a fight, whatever it might be. So that kind of fatigue, but how it affects the brain. And it was very interesting to see that. So, and I deal with issues with focus, and I didn't tell him that, and he's able to see it by looking at my brain. Right. My lack of ability to focus. Wow. So I'm like, it's very interesting. But sleep changes so much. I will say for us, for athletes, sleep is part of the job. So it's a component. But you got to look at it as part of the job.
It's recovery.
Yes.
Like 100%, right? Like it's your best tool for recovery probably better over you could have excellent sleep and not do cryo and be fine, right? Exactly. Or you could have like terrible sleep and do cryo. You're going to be in a worse place.
I'd agree with that. I'd go with that. So
because I personally have been like a terrible sleeper like all my life. Like I can remember being 3 and I can't sleep good.
That's crazy. That's the next level.
Probably there's something wrong with me for sure. Maybe like I'm not a what is it when you an insomniac? I'm not that, but I don't know, I just can't,
just
like
irritable.
I don't know, like, or sometimes like my legs are alive, or sometimes like I'm just my body will not sleep. Like, and I must have been horrible. Like I'd just go down and go, oh mum, and they'd be asleep. Well, I can't sleep. Like I'd be like, so fucking what? And like, there's a TV up there. Go watch it. I can. You know, like, but that's
Parenting 101.
It was just like how I was, and I kind of, you know, I've read so much about sleep, and lavender and not too much, and honey by itself, but not with fat, and all this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I think in my around 12 and stuff like that, I used to approach it with then I'll make myself tired. So I'd be 11 o'clock and I can't sleep or whatever, then I'd go run.
Right. Okay.
Which I kind of try to exhaust myself, and it sort of helps.
But that's so kind of coming back to that. Exactly, because I'm talking about not only physical exhaustion, but I mean talking about the nervous system, which ultimately will affect your brain.
Right.
And why I think meditation is becoming all the thing right now, essentially, and I think people don't maybe say that enough, so it's not understood, but to calm down your nervous system, because when you train, that's firing up the nervous system. So you might feel physically tired, but have you ever had that thing where you go to bed, you're physically exhausted, you want to sleep, but your brain won't go to sleep?
All the time.
That's your nervous
2 nights
system
ago.
fired up.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm understanding, and I hope I'm saying it right. I'm trying to sound all sciencey and confident, but I'm probably saying everything wrong. But no, I'm kidding. That's definitely right. But nervous system. And why I say that is because recently Santiago's been teaching me breathing exercises and learned to slow down my breathing, because I breathe at a very high rate, like maybe 13, 14 breaths a minute, and he was trying to bring it down to 6. I mean, not to maintain 6, but learn to bring it down there. Yeah, and he would do that while having me hooked up with wires and stuff, and he could see my brain activity, and you can see on the graph my fight or flight response coming way down when I practice that. Yeah, no, it's crazy how much I've learned through this experience with him. It's so he's a sports psychologist, but he specializes in, again, brain mapping and brain training. That's what he calls it. And very interesting. And sometimes it might seem like the obvious, but when you start linking things to, for example, how traumatic experiences have affected your brain, which kind of subconsciously affect your daily life and everything you're doing. So, for example, for me, he recognized that the big red flags was not good sleep, and also my focus was terrible. So he takes a brain scan of you sitting there 10 minutes with your eyes open and then 10 minutes with your eyes closed, and he's able to see how my brain and my body struggles to focus. Like, it would just shut down for seconds at a time, like it's a pattern. And I was like,
what,
damn,
the focus thing, is it like an ADHD type of thing or something similar?
I mean ADHD is pretty much something that everyone, I think, in my family suffered from.
Right.
My dad and brother more in particular, but yeah, it's definitely, because again, it's involuntary. It's just happening, and you're like, God damn. It's like, he even said, he's like, in school, did you really struggle paying attention and often felt like inferior to everybody else? And I'm like, yeah, 100%. And that's when I would kind of go in that I don't care and I'm not gonna waste my time at all because I can't even keep up in the first place, that kind of attitude. But yeah, it's very interesting. I feel because he did my partner Abdu's as well. He did his brain mapping too, and so that was something to compare, because I was curious. I was like,
actually quite good to do it with someone else's.
It is, because sometimes you kind of think like, oh, we probably all have a bit of the same thing, but his was very different to mine. So for me, the trauma part of my brain was fired up, and Abdu's wasn't, and his focus thing wasn't there, but he could tell that he had just a general fatigue from lack of sleep. And so for him, it was more learning techniques to kind of help him to sleep better. But for mine was the trauma, and he was linking that to injury. So that's another very interesting thing that I've learned recently, is how trauma from an injury related situation,
say your knee sort of
exactly
thing.
Which is huge, because that was a big one. I mean, tearing an ACL, you literally learn to walk all over again. And your chance of recovering fully or to come back to sport professionally, it's always like 50-50.
What, so your brain has really this thing where it's like wary of it and conscious of it?
Exactly. And it might not show in my attitude. I haven't been aware of that at all. But from what he's telling me, now I'm realizing, damn, that actually causes a lot of subconscious stress or affects my process of decision making very differently than to other people. So it does affect you. It affects you a lot.
Right.
And yeah.
Like an emotional scar, in a way.
It is,
It's your body's emotional scar.
Exactly. And I think the tricky thing for people is there's no like kind of written process of how to deal with that. It's kind of something you got to trial and error with. But it's very interesting. And I I would advise any athlete who's suffered from a big injury and who's struggling to look into some kind of therapy, mental therapy, to go through it, because it definitely can restrict a lot if you don't deal with it in the right way.
Especially if you're trying to like compete at the, you know, like at an elite level, right? Everything's measured in like millimeters,
For
or,
sure.
or you know, like if you're sprinting, it's measured in like fractions of seconds, right? So like all those little gains add up, right? And all those little negatives add up as well.
For sure. And you don't want that to set you back, like on a fight night, like it comes into your head that day.
Yeah.
So, but if anything, I really do view my injury as like a blessing. I feel like I learned so much through the experience.
Right.
As a fighter and as a instructor. So I feel fortunate for it, which is weird. I think it might sound strange.
No, but like, you know, like you found like a positive way to look at what you went through in your first fight, right?
Yes.
Like, and whilst a terrible thing to occur, like there is a positive out of that. Like you faced your hardest fight in your first fight. So every other fight in some level is a walk in the park in terms of preparation.
Yeah.
Like, cause like I know, especially like with the sleep issues, like, like I've never done, like I've only done jiu-jitsu tournaments, right? So it's not fighting.
Right.
There's no such thing as a jiu-jitsu fight. Like it's fucking grappling. No one's smashing you in the face. So it's not a fight.
Yeah.
But I've had like a fair few in at different levels, right? And some overseas and in really intimidating environments and stuff like that. And like, always my struggle was the preparation and sleeping for it,
right,
and stuff like that, and I realized the ones that I did best at was like when I wasn't prepared. Like maybe I prepared leading up to the day, but like, you know, like in the early ones I had, like to win the whole tournament you had to have 5 or 6 fights, and you know, like it's a long time ago, and the comps are sort of not that well organized. Like, you know, you're supposed to fight at, I remember I was supposed to fight at the Europeans at like 5 p.m. in the day, and I ended up fighting at 9 p.m. at night. Right. Right? So it come down to like just who handles themselves best on the day. Yes. So it was like when I was like
the anxiety and the nervousness.
So what I stumbled upon it by accident. Like I turned up, fought, won. It's like, cool, I'm not going to fight for a while. I got something to eat. I was eating it and they went Paul Hayes, and I was like, oh fuck. I put that down, went on, won. I was like, oh shit, like I'll finish the thing. And like last mouthful, Paul Hayes, like I had like 3 fights so quick. Yeah. But like, of course I wasn't sat there in between it like, who am I fighting?
Anxious and thinking about it.
I did good and I won it. And then every time after that, it was like, do you know what? Just distract your mind. Like, so I'd sleep before it, or I'd play chess with someone and just think about something else. Yeah. Where you see other people like
hyping themselves.
Yeah, and burning nervous
to be very
energy.
honest, I personally don't like to say there's a right or wrong way, because I think everyone's going to have what works for them.
Yes.
And I believe in different times in your life, different things going to work too.
That's a good point.
You always got to go through the motions. But what I find really helps me is just being very honest with myself at the time. Like if I'm nervous, as opposed to going down the route and distracting. And again, this works for me now, but I just find I like to bring it to the surface. Like, I'm nervous as hell. Like, I'm so nervous. But why? But I try to understand why. And it's almost like having that conversation with myself. Why do you feel so nervous? Yeah. Oh, because you haven't been in this environment for a long period of time. Is it because you feel underprepared? No, like you prepared. Kind of start checking all the boxes. And I think if you've done the right amount of work in the fight camp, you'll be able to like pass over that moment, because you realize how, I always say, your opponent is always going to be scarier, and the fight's always going to be so much harder in your head when you hype it up than it will be in real, or at least I think like 90% of the time. And I mean, I'm a person who I like to overestimate. So I'm kind of ready for anything. Okay. And I'll create all kinds of situations in my head of how it can go wrong, or seeing myself getting knocked out in this way or whatever, so that I'm like, I know what's coming. And like, okay, it can't be worse than that. Small percentage it can, but you know, more or less, it's not going to get worse than that. So you kind of know what to expect. And it might be another extreme, but I also tell myself, like, look, this could be the last thing you ever do. You might die in this ring. So let's deal with it. Like, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And
Enjoy
ultimately,
it.
yeah. and kind of what I do for my process is put myself in the most mindful and present state as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you become, it's like I describe it as like hyper awareness, because you're very aware of everything going on. And again, that's an exhausting thing to do, I think, for the nervous system as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you wouldn't do it for long periods of time, but for the fight, I do that. And then I'm just like super, super focused in that period of time.
Meaning that you're so focused that there is only that this second now,
Yeah.
sort of thing, and there is, you're not thinking or anything about like 10 seconds ahead,
Yeah.
or
not
10
at all.
minutes ahead,
Or like the crowd or the noises or anything. It's almost, I'm just like in
it's literally just
yeah.
there.
And I'm just thinking, yes, just exactly. Just being as present as possible. Because it's surprising how easy it sounds to say, just be present. But when you actually try to be present and maintain that for a certain period of time, it's hard as hell. Especially now, I think we're living in a world with more distractions than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, phone being number one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in general, I find like most people's attention span sucks ass. And mine sucks anyways, so yeah.
No, but just like you say, attention span, right? And be present, like, and that's like around attention and focus, but like it's also about having no focus in a way, right? Like, because if
Yes.
do you know, because like say like
Yes.
hearing you talk about it, it's like it's at the start of a yoga class, they say, okay, just have your focus on now and forget about whatever. You're lying down, you're comfortable. It's so hard to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can,
Yeah.
but it's not just an instant thing.
Yes.
Let alone having to try to achieve that.
Right.
Oh, and I've got a fight coming up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is very hard.
Yeah, it is. But it's true. So when I say focus, I'd say that attention to, well, that ability to not let anything external distract you or take your trail of thought somewhere and you like attach to that thing. Always try to just keep a super open and empty mind. That's how I would describe it. So like a lot of people are like, do you go in angry and stuff? I think the only fight I went to in angry was my first one, that MMA fight, the first one. But after that, I didn't have that emotion. If anything, I find it distracting.
Yeah.
Because I find when you
it's no
bring
good.
emotion, you start to make decisions kind of because of that emotion. It's subtly influencing your decision making. And what I believe you really need to do as a fighter, but more particularly a boxer, you have to learn to react with what's in front of you, and you have no idea what that's going to be. So I always say fight camp training, that's to put in the work. So all of these movements and reflexes and reactions become second nature, but ultimately you just have to, you're kind of putting pieces of the puzzle together, learning, figuring out what to do when with whatever's in front of you.
It's literally like playing a computer game.
Yes.
Do you know,
yeah.
like a car driving one where like a car jumps out from nowhere and this happens and you're just like in this zone, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But then it's just strategizing on the go. You usually come in with your strategy, but then you have to learn to kind of like shift gears and like, oh, wait a second, this person's doing this or this is their style, so now I have to adapt and then adapt again and keep making these really small changes the whole way through. So you're kind of like, I mean, that's how I see for the very top level guys anyways and what I aspire to be. But you're just constantly aware of what they're trying to do and trying to one up them all the time.
But also like I imagine like you're kind of like, especially in boxing, you have time as long as they don't knock you out. Like so like you're kind of like testing and learning. Do you know what I mean? So what happens if I sort of like just do like little movements like that? Are they reacting? Are they picking up on it, sort of thing? Is there an, you know, like there's this little dance that's occurring, right? So you're testing and learning and you're testing and learning, but as long as the lesson is not like major impact to your head, then you're compiling all this data, right?
For sure,
like a computer.
For sure. And again, that's where you get that confidence, and in your fight camp, in your sparring, I always say you want to save all the experimenting and trial and error for your fight camp. So on the day, you just have confidence in whatever you're doing, because that's another interesting thing about fighting is, again, you put yourself into a very vulnerable state. And a lot of the time when you analyze a fight and you start to look at body language, facial expression, you could see what mindset a fighter is in. and kind of like if they're in their flow or if they're distracted or if they're in more of a defensive mode, or so, you can often break it down and see it if you really pay attention.
What are you like then leading, like, because you know, like, especially with the MMA stuff, right? There's stuff leading up to it, right? And you have a weigh in, you have a face off. Like, how do you handle that?
Usually I try to practice being super present way before the fights and not just on the day. So things like that, I do my best not to anticipate. I feel habitually, and I don't know if it's like a defensive mechanism for human beings to anticipate, to kind of make ourselves feel better, like we think we know what's going to happen or whatever. But I just kind of try to go by feeling. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. I just want to weigh in and fight. If you come, you just respect me.
So you're just chilled and casual about it? Like,
I am,
I'm putting my headphones on.
I'm
okay,
super chill about it.
We'll take off, we'll weigh.
Yes.
Oh, you want to, like, look at me angry?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, whatever.
I mean, because I don't consider myself now an aggro person. So, and, yeah. I mean, I just go by feeling.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Because to me, the biggest challenge is, like, to, on the day of fight, on the day of competition, to work out a way that you can do what you do at training in the fight. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Like, to come up with a game plan, you mean, and know what to work on?
No. Before, like for me personally, I found that, like, in the gym, I was always better in the gym than I was when I fought on that day, because, like, all the stress and emotion sort of thing, like, it wouldn't all come out. I'd only show 60% of what I knew, and then if I can, like, okay, well, next time I need to show 70 or 80, and you know, like, and I think that's why I ended up in this space where it's just like, it's probably the wrong thing. Just a bit, whatever, like, you know, it's just a whatever. Just go out there and just do what you do at training, and try to make it as casual and loose as possible, and not like so aggressive and stuff like that. Like, let it flow. Like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, that would make the most sense, because where you're training, your training partners, you might not realize it and probably train really hard, but that's a comfort zone. You know what I mean? And kind of like, looking a little further, I always find that at the end, the tool that I believe, again, is going to be very powerful for a person, not just a fighter, is having a resilience. So, like, when I say that, I mean resilience with decision making, no matter where you are and what's going on. And so, I mean, these are things that I think about all the time, but I always say how you have an evolution as a fighter, it also depends on what you're doing to evolve as a person outside of the ring or the cage or the mats.
Okay.
So that's why I often find people who have learned to be very resilient in negative situations can perform very well in competitive environments, because, again, they've learned how to apply that resilience. They know how it feels to be put out of their comfort zone, but still have to press forward and succeed and switch on.
Yep.
And that's why it's something that I find very valuable and interesting from, again, my first MMA experience. And like you said, at the time, I'm like, oh my God, this is a disaster, like whatever. But it became probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Because like you said,
right?
no camp has ever been worse. And I've been through bad camps. I've gotten injured right before fights. I've gotten sick and all kinds of things, like issues with the opponents, and now I'm just like, I'm just immune to it. It's weird. I'm like, no, wait, you did that, you could do anything, you know what I mean? But not in an overconfident way. I was a believer in, like, you know, you still gotta be realistic and, like, keep your eye on the prize and stay humble about it, because, you know, you're only human. But but to keep that mindset, it's more so that I can unleash my potential. That's how I see it.
So then you were competing in MMA, and you're in one. And then, so you then transition into boxing. So you had an injury, right?
Yeah, I tore my ACL. Right. So I tore it. I was actually, like, getting ready to prepare for an MMA fight. And I tore it in training. I was with a new team at that time, and I think it was Thailand, if I remember right. So and that was pretty rough. I didn't know what an ACL was when I had torn it, so that was interesting. And when I realized, I was like, damn, when I looked into it a little bit more, I realized like that's an injury. Like it's a career changing injury.
How did it happen?
I was kickboxing sparring, took a low kick and it just blew my knee out. But I was sparring with someone a lot heavier than me.
Okay.
And after that, I feel like, I mean, it's not the only thing, but again, you know, being a girl, often the smallest in the room, walking around at like a maximum mid-50s and sparring with guys that are like 70 kilos, it's not smart. And I used to have this kind of gung-ho attitude, like, sure, put me in front of anybody and I'll spar them, whatever. I'm not scared. But I'm like, wait, it's not about scared or not. I don't have to project that insecurity. It's like, is that smart or is that going to be actually useful for me? And this guy was just way heavier. He jumped into this low kick and blew my knee out.
Oh, so he was also going a bit hard.
Yes. Yeah. So it was funny because actually in a session before that, I actually gave him a hard time in jiu-jitsu. He couldn't submit me and I was really giving him hell because ground was not really his game. And at the time, my ground game was very strong because in MMA, my goal was always to submit. I was actually surprisingly not much of a striker or well-adapted striker at that point, even though I came from a boxing background. I hadn't learned to apply it very proficiently in MMA. So ground game was my thing. And I kind of gave him a hard time. And he even, like, as a joke, really lovely guy. He's a British guy. I think he's still competing and might have gone pro in MMA. But he's like, I'm going to get you back in striking later. And I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? And I remember the coach going like, guys, 40% technique only, no strength. He jumps into this low kick. It's the first thing he threw and it just blew my knee out. It was totally unlucky. But at the same time, I feel like, in my opinion, I do believe that with my mindset just as a person and a fighter at that time, I think that a major injury was bound to happen. Right. And I'm more fortunate that it did happen in training than in a fight.
What, like you were too gung-ho, too reckless? Like I'll
yes.
Put whoever in front of me.
Yes. And my strategy was all on just aggressive. Just press forward. Take hits, but go. You know what I mean? I didn't have much of a concept of defense, at least not for striking. For jiu-jitsu was a lot more developed, but for striking I feel I didn't have that. And also I just find I had a lack of education and experience to understand what it really meant to be a complete fighter and an athlete. I feel I didn't have an athletic approach to things. Like my strength and conditioning program wasn't there. You know, I had no concept of energy systems and recovery systems and a proper nutrition plan. And it's really then when I started to invest a lot of time to educate myself about this stuff and to realize that being a successful athlete, there's components to it. There's not just go and train and that's it. There's a lot to it. And that was the start of that journey. Right. And then also that whole concept of injury prevention, I think it's a very important thing for anybody to consider. And so that kind of started then. So again, it became very valuable. Don't get me wrong though, it was difficult. It was very difficult to go from being a driven athlete with goals to suddenly learning to have to walk all over again. And my surgery didn't go as straightforward as planned. And I had complications after. Even until now, I have to be very mindful about it. I keep doing my physio and my rehab and stuff to strengthen it. So But
so you even now today, like you're still doing those physio exercises
all the time. And I've even adapted my style to take as little stress off that as possible. Because the reality is once you bust your knee, your ACL,
it's never going to be the same.
It's never going to be the same. But it's possible I really do believe it's possible to work with it as long as it's not that attitude where you're just trying to go mind over body. Like, no, you got to respect your situation. And I think it's always great having an inspiration or a, how do I say, like an example to follow. And for me, it was Andrei Ward. I don't know how much into boxing you are.
I know the name, right?
Yeah.
And he's
retired now.
Yeah,
but
Mickey. He always had these with Mickey. Is it Mickey Gall or something? Like
I think you're thinking Mickey Ward. I don't know. But anyways, Andrei Ward. He's I believe he's undefeated. Or he might have had one or two losses.
The one. It's not the guy that there was a movie about that.
I think you're thinking about. No, I think you're thinking about No, I was gonna say Jack
Christian Bale. The Batman dude played.
What's it called?
A boxer.
It's not the fighter.
No, not that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into it. But Andrei Ward, he's a phenomenal fighter. So something that's really admirable about him is he has a very high fight IQ. And when I say that, I mean ability to analyze, readjust, or follow a strategy. And I always find those fighters the most intriguing because essentially I think that's the hardest thing to do. Because throwing punches, moving your body, that's one thing. But to be able to do all of that while you're analyzing your opponent, that's kind of like, and readjusting your game plan, that's like that's what sets a real champ apart from the rest. But
and he was like a master at that.
Yes, so if you can actually search Andrei Ward.
Yes.
And it might show his record too, but
so he's 2004 to 2017,
right,
retired with an undefeated record.
Okay.
It's not the one that Christian Bale played because Andrei Ward's black.
Yeah.
Christian Bale is not.
I didn't want to say it, Paul, but you said it now too. He's black.
Yeah, you're allowed to say that.
Nowadays, people get shit for anything.
When I first went to the UK, I didn't know what to do because
Yeah.
in Australia, Aboriginal people, they didn't like to be. When I was growing, it was even back then. It was.
I don't know what to say.
I remember trying to say to somebody.
I have Asian, and I'm half Asian, so I can comment about Asian things. But everything else, I'm like, I don't know what to say.
The first time I was in London,
Yeah.
I'm like, who's the guy that works up there? And people are like, oh, who are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know. He's
not
like this
white,
tall.
but, yeah.
They're like, oh, the black dude. And I was like, yeah. They said you're allowed to say that here. It's like, okay, cool.
Okay. But yes. Well, he tore his ACL.
Right.
And he came back. And he talks a lot about, and so this is what's very interesting because I stopped running. So my last fight camp, I didn't run at all. I think I've done another one where I didn't run at all too. And I mean, for boxing, that's like unheard of.
Yeah.
Like road work is such a huge part of every fight camp. And he's the first fighter I ever heard who I was listening to on a podcast who wouldn't run after his ACL tears as well and did all his conditioning elsewhere and still performed like a beast.
How did he do it?
And so there's so many ways. I mean, I find in the US there's so much more advanced
and stuff like that.
Exactly. Assault bikes, stuff in the pool. They got those other machines that you use your hands. I don't know what they're called, rowing machines.
Yeah.
Anything that wouldn't put that impact on his knees unnecessarily. And nowadays there's so many systems and ways of training and achieving a similar goal without having to do the old school way. And so that became very inspiring and gave me a lot of confidence, like, no, this is possible, like I am on the right track and doing the right thing. Because so
but if you don't do the running, you don't feel like Rocky. That's you know what I mean. You can't be like just,
well, I still play the music in my headphones. I'm just on the
then
bike.
it's all right. Rocky never rode a bike. Rocky never rode. What's that shit?
Oh, come on. You can get away with it. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I feel like I felt great. Conditioning wise, feel stronger than I ever have been.
Yeah.
And if I could do that without running, why not?
Yeah, for sure,
yeah.
right? Like, in sports science has moved on and training techniques have moved on.
Exactly.
And like you said, like, not everything's the same for everyone else, right? Like, for somebody who's got, like, weak joints or, like, for a heavier person, like, running and all the stress going through the knees is terrible. Yeah,
For
you're
sure.
like constantly pounding on the road and stuff like that.
But just to have that example at that level, because Andrei Ward, you have to watch his fights after this or pull up one of them. It's just insane what level he's on. And to see someone to be able to achieve that, you're like, damn, it gives you hope in a good way. So, of course, you still have to be sensible. And one thing I do is always try to educate myself about all of these things all the time and stay up to date with the latest knowledge and stuff. Try to stay mindful of supplements, nutrition, sleeping patterns, recovery systems, S&C programs, all of this stuff. But yeah, essentially that was the beginning of my journey into boxing. And it was funny because at the time I was still rehabbing back. And I found the team that I'm with now, the Ring Boxing Community. So the guy working there was a party friend of my brother. They would kind of party together, which is funny. My brother kind of linked me up to another boxing thing. But he was speaking with him about me and like, oh yeah, actually my sister was pursuing MMA, but she had a really bad injury and she's actually talking about going into boxing now. And I didn't have any resources for it. I was like, I know I want to do it. I'm going to box. My knee's messed up, but I'm going to box.
I can't kick.
Can't do
punch.
jiu-jitsu. Yes, I'm a punch people. But so I found them, trialed with the team, went really well.
Is that his French or from Monaco or something?
Oh,
Is that
that's,
him?
yeah, that's Rishi. But the guy who was met my brother was the manager. His name is Zul.
Right.
So he
Okay.
kind of like introed me to them,
Right.
which was cool. And then yeah, and that's where I met my partner too. So I met him when I trialed there. He was also new here, Abdu, and yeah, so I went there and so my surgery. I don't know. Do you know much about ACLs?
I know they're in the knee and then the outside of the knee, and
So
I know
basically,
footballers always tear them.
yeah, exactly. So basically, it's the main ligament that connects this bone, or your shin, with your big, I don't know what it's called, but the upper, the thigh bone. It connects it.
Femur or femur or something
Yeah.
like that.
So it's, I think, hard. But
so
it
it's
connects,
important.
So it connects the knee joint, yes. So basically, if you have no ACL, the likeliness of your leg just twisting and blowing out is extremely high because it's keeping that together. It's keeping that knee joint
Otherwise,
intact
there's
and
just like
support.
a chunk of meat being held on by a string.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's even how I knew I had torn it. Because when I had the injury, I was like, oh, muscle tear, I'll rest and come back.
Keep going one second.
Came back, oh, for sure. Well, after a month, I threw a low kick on the bag and my leg just collapsed. And I was like, what the hell? I was in a little bit of pain.
What, like you couldn't
but my
stand
knee
on
went
it?
out- yeah, it just went out. And I was like, I didn't slip. There was no stability. And that's when I was like, all right, something's seriously wrong. And I just told the doctor and he's like, you've torn it completely. We're going to do an MRI anyway for the sake of insurance, but you've torn it.
But you have.
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, damn it. So that was kind of like intense. But, so actually for me, and that's where it's funny because I even came from the boxing background, but I'm like, I'll go into boxing because, it's hands. I won't need to rely so much on my legs, which is total nonsense.
Loads,
yeah.
right?
I mean, boxing is 100%. It's footwork.
Yeah.
It's a kinetic chain movement, right? If you don't get the footwork right, how are you going to...
I told you the other day I did the boxing class, right? And there was this dude and I was like he was like so army and handsy, right? And I was like...
Biggest misconception.
I was like, imagine trying to spit in someone's face, right? Which we should never do.
Yeah.
Like all the... And then the... Like that.
Yeah.
I said, that's all like the legs and
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
And then like this bit, that's like after the spit left your mouth. Right? And he was like looking at me funny, but he got it.
Yeah, that was a disgusting analogy, but it works full.
Yeah, but like, because like that last bit is literally nothing,
but
right?
anybody can do that. Tell anybody to throw their arms. Anyone can do that. So what makes it an art is learning how to generate that force from the ground up. And
like
again,
from
that's
your
a very
toe and bringing it
specific
up
movement.
through your body.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where I find
you can
boxing
use that
is
if you want.
far more. Oh yeah, Freya, thank you.
Yeah, for the spitting analogy for anyone who teach you.
Maybe I'll bring it to life at a weigh-in. Yeah, no. But yeah, it's interesting. So when I came there, basically, so for my ACL, your general 3 options, I don't know if there's more, but you either take a bit from your patella tendon and use that as a graft to allow the ligament to grow back. So they kind of fix it in there to create like a bridge for your ligament to grow back.
I got
It takes approximately 9 months because they have to go in at the patella, which is the front of the knee. Right? So then your other option is hamstring, where again, they take a piece of your hamstring apart or some strains of your hamstring.
Yeah.
Because you got a lot of tendons within there. But, and again, same thing, but that takes a 12-month recovery. Or then you can do the cadaver, which is from a dead person. They take the ligament. And I'm like kind of into energy and stuff and don't want a dead person in me. So... I spoke with the doctor and at the time my plan was to box till I could go back into MMA. So he recommended hamstring because he's like, jiu-jitsu, dropping on your knees a lot. That's going to cause a lot of stress at the front of the knee. So let's go with the hamstring.
Okay.
Might affect your wrestling a little bit and the drive and the explosiveness, but should be able to get away with it. So I did that. So it's a 12-month recovery. So just to be super clear, 12 months, you should not even consider going into competitive scenarios. Yeah, and I had taken my first amateur boxing fight 4.5 months after the surgery.
Okay.
So that was ridiculously stupid. And again, I realized I was just being really like
gung-ho again.
Yeah, again, and just like, no, I want to fight, I'm out, and like almost like that. So I had some issues and hadn't been able to fight a little bit before that. So I think there's a bit of pressure I put on myself too. Like, I've been out for a long time. I want to be back. You know what I mean? I want to be in that competitive environment. And to be fair, I didn't do totally bad on that first fight. It was an amateur boxing fight. But I realized in the ring, like, I was like, I can't move. Like, I was so afraid to take a step because all that was in my head was the trauma from when I tore my knee coming back to my head in that environment. Like, if you step out wrong, you're going to blow out your knee again. That's just what I kept telling myself. The whole fight, I was just thinking about my knee. I wasn't thinking about the fight.
Do the operation again. Start the recovery
Exactly.
again.
And so I had like no footwork. I was just stuck on the spot and I could like, if it was like an exchange of punches, I could go, but I couldn't move. Couldn't move in and out. I was so afraid.
Right.
And you could see how I just freeze up. So that took a lot of rehab, I think, physically and mentally to get to the stage where I could at least be like light on my feet again. And it was particularly hard for the amateur style because amateur boxing, it's about high volume of punches, fast
in and
quick
out.
exchanges, which is probably the worst. So if anything, I feel I adapted to pro better because at least you can afford to be a bit more grounded, set up your shots.
Yes.
But you still got a lot of those pivots and stuff. So
and depend on your style, right? Like some people are like super active and everywhere.
Especially my division, 52.
Yeah, I imagine everyone will be moving. Yeah. Everyone's fast, right?
Yeah. So that was that challenge, but I managed to overcome it till now. And again, I feel stronger than ever because I feel like so much more aware of my body now than I ever was before.
But that's a very powerful thing or skill to have.
Yes, that's why. So yeah, I really do find that it's important to respect those processes and work with it and do what you can with it. And fortunately, I did. So
how many amateur fights did you have?
Oh, for boxing, look, I'm not sure exactly, but leading up, like after MMA, maybe 4 or 5. Okay. But the whole goal was to go into those, like we knew, it was more to set me up and get that confidence to then be able to go pro. Because my team, they already recognized, they're like, look, we know you'll thrive in a professional environment and style. So let's just work our way to get to that. But yeah, it was just more to get those fights, get back on my feet and get into the rhythm of things and overcome that, what I now know was trauma, essentially. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And when did you cross over?
As in like what year?
Yeah.
It was probably about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 years.
So this is like before like McGregor trying to fight Mayweather and stuff like that.
This was all during.
Okay.
Because he tried to fight him, I think, about 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
I was going to say that you paved the way.
We could say that anyway, Paul. I'll take the...
Yeah.
I'll claim it. Yeah.
So you have like four or 5 amateur fights and then it's pro fight.
Yeah.
So what's the difference is no headgear...
No headgear, smaller gloves. So for me, I think in amateur, 14-ounce gloves or 12 for amateur. And then headgear, and professional, 8-ounce gloves, no headgear. Yeah.
And so that mindset from going into an MMA fight compared to going to a boxing fight, like same, more or less?
It was very different. I think because when I experienced that injury, every time I've gone for a surgery or been in an injury, I've always told myself, you're not going to come back from this. Like, your career's done. I was so sure of it. When I came out of my ACL surgery, I remember, like, wanting to get through it, but there was a part of me that's like, I don't think you'll be able to. Like, biologically, it's out of my control.
Right.
I was like, you know what I mean? So,
like, it's more that you were sort of having an analytical mind and the probability of it rather than, like, down in the dumps and, like...
Yes.
You know, being negative.
Yes. I mean,
factual.
It still was very depressing to an extent. It was a very difficult time to go through. But, I remember like a week being out of surgery. They're like, you've got to use crutches for like 6 weeks. I was off the crutches in a week and in pain, but just trying to walk anywhere and try to shadow box in the spot.
Do you know what?
And I'm like...
I had, I don't know if you know, like I had a full shoulder reconstruction-y thingy. Like, so like the labrum, right? Like, the dude, it was really bad. Like the guy that did my operation, he does the rugby players in Australia, right? So he said I normally do 3. So the labrum, he said, it's like a piece of calamari on the roof of your shoulder. He said, I know you got to drill through the bone, through the calamari, stitch it on. He goes, I normally do 3.
Okay.
He goes, the most I've ever done 6. He goes, we're gonna do 9. He was so excited, like telling me this. I'm like, And then he goes,
Yeah.
you know, can I bring in my students? And I'm like, oh, okay, like this, you know, after it, he was like, oh, it was amazing. It was just
Yeah.
like hanging on by a thread when I got in
no.
there. He goes,
Oh,
I
that's
pulled
gross.
out bone chips the size of the nail. He goes, I had to cut bigger holes to take them out and remove the clavicle, that straw.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did my recovery to what they told me to. And a lot of it was in the sling.
Yeah.
And I wasted away and was so tight. And then the second one I had like 10 years later, I got out of the sling and I was like moving myself like this. And the physio, she said, it's so good that you did that because she goes, there was less atrophy
Right.
and you've gained more movement.
Yes. To be fair, I think doctors say, to some extent, kind of like give you this generalized suggestion, right? Like, or the safest option, I guess. But at the same time, so it's one thing that I read that's very interesting, because after that I looked into Dominic Cruz, I looked into GSP, because they were two MMA fighters who had suffered ACL tears but came back and were very successful. And I think one of them, the sports person or whoever helped rehab them, one person said how the good thing about an athlete is because of your drive to recover and come back, it kind of like, it's a good thing in that like you will try to be active and you'll use those muscles just like you said, you won't get the atrophy and stuff, and you're more driven to recover. But the flip side is like or the downside is that can also put you in a worse position or higher risk of re-injuring.
As long as you don't make a bad decision about
exactly,
it, right?
So it's kind of like a calculated risk. Got to be like, I'm driven, I want to get better.
Yeah.
And so
it's like, oh, I'm going to use it today to like, I'm going to start opening doors now.
Yes.
Rather than I'm going to start escaping Kimuras.
Right. Exactly. But that's where I feel I got very close. Taking that first fight at that time.
Yeah, that sounds early.
It was stupidly early.
Yeah.
Stupidly early. But after that, I realized like, it was the first time, because it's weird. I had the mindset going in, and like, but I only dealt with that in the ring, in the competition. I didn't feel that fear in training and stuff. Of course, it was there on my mind, but not to that extent. To the point my whole body shut down. I couldn't do what I wanted it to.
Right.
So it was kind of a good thing and a bad thing. I'm just fortunate I came out of it. But coming back to my mindset for the boxing, I feel like I was convinced during this process that I would have no career after that. And I remember just when I walked the ring for my first pro fight, I was so happy to be there.
Like grateful.
I just remember, I was just like, this could be the last time I could fight. I'm aware of that. Like, I never know what can go wrong, but I get to do this again. You know what I mean? And I'm like, and I get to get in there one more time. And now my mindset to every fight, whenever people ask long down the line, I'm like, I always make the next fight the most important one, because you never know how things are going to go. You never know how things can change. And I think it helps you to not only appreciate what you have, but like everything in that moment too. Just like, you know, just be content with everything you have, not like chasing some kind of dream like, oh, I'm only going to be happy if I have this or that, because I feel like I've seen people do that. And I mean, ultimately you get that too, and then you're like, okay, now what? You know what I mean? So
I feel like I don't know what it is, like when I see like those people that everyone's got their own thing that works for them, right?
Yeah.
Like, as we say, like, and some people go in like looking like intense, like they're like going to fucking war.
Yeah.
And other people like go in and they're just
Super
like
chill.
so like loose and happy. And I feel like if I was stood against somebody or watching someone else come into the ring, like who, you know, and the person's just like enjoying it and like a feeling of gratitude, I think that's the person I fear most.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're just so like, to me, someone who looks like that looks like this. They're not
so
dealing with all the
in
mental
that environment.
shit. Yeah,
Yes,
so comfortable. Yeah.
And it is that exactly.
Yeah.
Like for me, on the day, like really, I'm just like, man, I don't give a damn about anybody, like, or anything.
Yeah.
I'm just here for me, and I'm like enjoying. And
I
it's
can
just
see it in your eyes right now.
Yes.
Like your eyes.
Yeah. So it's like, it's the best feeling.
So do you know who Genki Sudo is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, in that case, did he start singing?
Yeah. He's like
and he
like
did
in
the crazy performances
and dancing and stuff like this. There's these, you know, in
Yeah.
cryptocurrency, right? Like there's all these Telegram groups and there's these memes,
Okay.
like, and little gifs and stuff like that. Like I saw a gif the other day. because he's in this dance troupe, and there's all
Okay.
these like Japanese
Yes.
dudes, and they always
Yeah.
wear suits.
Yeah.
And he was in it.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh
and he's
my
getting
God.
pushed around like cryptocurrency, like, and they're sort of.
Oh, that's
they're,
hilarious.
They're doing this
Oh
thing all
my
at the same
gosh.
time.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah, like
hilarious.
his walkouts, like.
They were nuts. That's another level though.
Oh,
I feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
I'd be too
For
worried.
Japan
Maybe
and-
if you're like that good that you're like, you know, I'm so good. I'll do a whole dance performance before my fight, before my workout, and it's like,
But the way he,
I don't know.
the way he would walk in, like,
Yeah.
looked like somebody who
Extravagant.
enjoyed the moment.
Yes,
you know, like
yes.
it was extravagant.
Yes.
He was a geisha at one point.
Yeah.
One point, he looked like he had a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket on his head, and he was like a robot spaceman.
Yeah.
Like, but
Yeah.
then he'd get into the ring,
Yeah.
and he'd like the way he fought was just so like crazy and
Yeah.
relaxed, and
Yeah.
he's someone who really enjoyed the moment.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
yeah, you probably spend more time thinking of the choreography.
maybe.
So that's why.
And
you're
then when
so
he
chill
fights,
about
it all
yeah,
just comes
yeah.
out.
Exactly. So
Because you're
maybe-
very unorthodox as well, right?
Yes, yes. Which, to be fair, I think those are the hardest ones to read.
Yeah.
The guys who are not particularly technical, and they come at you with a style because, I mean, we know what we know through training, right? So when you get people who don't
Follow rhythms
follow,
and patterns.
that throws you off. And I
Mm.
think those are the biggest challenges. The guys who don't have a particular technique that's sharp. So.
Like I've been, I don't know, lucky enough or unlucky enough to go against pretty good people in the gym, right? Like, and that's in jiu-jitsu and stand-up. And I was saying to you before, like in stand-up, like go against guys that are on TV and spar against them. If I'm just like doing it like normal stuff, like they just pick me apart, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I'm sort of playing the same music tone as they're used to, right? But like if I was like awkward or mimic someone else, like
Yeah.
then, and they'd say to me like, "Oh fuck, that was awkward" or whatever.
Yeah.
It
It
makes
throws
me
off
unsure.
that process because they're ultimately you're making calculated decisions, right? Or you're trying to trap someone or something. So when you do something that's not in the book, you're like, you have to give it a moment to think, and that's the thing in fighting. Seconds can make or break a situation for anybody.
Yeah.
Right. So
And same in jiu-jitsu, like in more so in jiu-jitsu, like
Yeah.
one, you know, in London I trained Roger Gracie's academy. Like
yeah,
I'm a fucking minnow in
Yeah.
a school of sharks sometimes. Like, and so like to do, after a while, it's just like, oh, what happens if I just roll here and see what happens, sort of thing. And you're sort of getting out of stuff because it's
Yeah.
like it's not what you're supposed to do,
right.
sort of in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
feel you.
And I try to always find these little things, like, you know, like you're listening to someone's breathing.
Yeah.
Oh, they're gassed out.
Yeah.
Like then I would like pretend I'm gassed, but I'm not. You don't do that?
I mean, maybe not to that extent. Like
I do. Like say if Robin's got my back or whatever, like I'll be like going like
Oh,
that,
yeah,
but I'm not tired.
that's
Like
funny.
because then I'll know
That's
that
funny.
he's probably thinking, oh, okay, I've got him now. I'm going to go for that.
Yeah, yeah.
So then he thinks I'm tired, but I'm not, and then I'm moving.
Interesting.
And stuff like
No,
that.
it's a strategy. It's a
Yeah.
strategy. It works. I don't think I've ever done it that way, but in terms of baiting someone with a particular movement, or I'll do something. I know I did it more in jiu-jitsu. Like I'll pretend to go one way and really act like it's what I'm gonna do.
And meanwhile, you're
Knowing,
sort of like doing
yes,
something
and
here.
I'm just setting something else up,
Yeah.
kind of like that, but not like. I don't think I did the exhaustion thing. If I'm tired, I'll just be tired.
I
yeah.
even made up. I told this to Roger's dad. I asked him if have you ever heard of this, and he's like no, and he said, oh, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
So I have to, because these guys are so good,
no,
right?
to be fair,
So-
I mean, if you get the upper hand for that, why not? Because that's a big part of, like, for example, if you're in a 5 or 6 round sparring match in jiu-jitsu and you're getting towards the end and the other guy's getting tired and you're going to use all that energy, that explosiveness to do that last little thing,
Yeah.
like, you know, that's a big calculated risk.
No, but
for
what
him
I used to do, and this is what I told him, was I used to make like what do we bring? Carbon dioxide tents.
Okay. What is that?
I just made it up, and he was like, "This is cool, right?" So say like I'm in mount, right? Like we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide, right?
Okay.
So like I'll untuck my gi, and I'm in
and you'll
mount,
put
and
it
I
on the
make a
guy.
tent,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then I listen to their breathing, and when they breathe in, I'm breathing out, right? So I outside of the tent, I go, and then I go.
Oh, wow. So you're like literally suffocating them slowly.
Yeah.
That's strategic. Yeah.
Because I'm not good at
I mean,
other
it
things,
works.
so it's like
Yeah.
it's a different thing.
Why not? Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, like you don't
can't
get
do that in
you
boxing,
don't, but
though.
you don't get taught that in yeah. Come here, let me hold you. But no, but there's definitely different things in boxing, and I mean, if anything, it's funny coming from MMA. I thought like this is gonna be easy work. I'm going from training like 5 different things to one. How hard is that gonna be? But if anything, going from boxing to MMA and then back to boxing, it was so much more difficult because ultimately you're restricted. Now you can only attack with your hands.
Yeah, you need to be
And you can
perfect
only
at one
attack
thing.
this area, which is really, really fucking hard to do. Like, to like get in and just be able to hit someone where you want to, that's a lot of training already in itself. And so to be super precise like that, I mean, that was ultimately the challenge. You got to do so much more with so much less. And so that's why I realized boxers, like their reactions and their timing and their eyes are sharper than I believe almost any other martial artists. They're particularly sharp because you have to be.
Yeah.
For example, in MMA, you're getting tired. It's okay, you close the distance, you clinch if you panic or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah, you can go from one thing to another. There's so many transitions. But boxing, if they step in, they hit you, and then they step out, you've missed that shot to hit them back. You're going to have to wait again, either until they come in or you're going to have to go in. You know what I mean? So you have to be very calculated and very precise. It's all timing.
And everything's just coming in like certain channels, right? Like, and just who's going to win.
Yeah.
From that and that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other options,
Yes,
right? There's not
exactly.
like, do you know what? Fuck, I'll just try this.
Yeah.
Like, there's no, I'll just try
charge
this.
at them and hope they'll go to the ground or whatever.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
can change your tactics, but
Yes.
it's limited. It's still
Yes.
within the one lane.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Do you ever get frustrated, like say, like I did, like, Thai boxing and stuff before I did jiu-jitsu, right? So then like I'd do jiu-jitsu and people would be beating me. This is when I'm younger.
Okay.
And I'd get frustrated and in my mind I'd be like thinking, I'd never say it, but I'd be thinking like, fuck you. If this was like, if we could kick and punch, I could fucking smash you. Like, are you ever like boxing now and someone's getting better than you and you're thinking, fuck, if I could kick your leg, I could fuck you up?
No, I don't. I'm like completely in that world where I'm just like thinking what I can do with that. But it's, yeah.
Maybe
it's
that was
funny.
my immaturity.
Maybe I'll start to think about it now.
No,
just
I don't
to
think you should.
wind myself up.
Don't do that.
Yeah. No, but if anything, when I see like the boxes, I'm like, and I look at my striking for MMA, if anything, I'm like, God damn, I don't know how. In fact, not only me, but now when I look at MMA fights, I'm actually surprised at the level of striking that people get away with. I'm like, it's not a particularly high level most of the time.
I don't want to
and
sound...
that's quite generally speaking.
Yeah.
But again, coming from boxing where timing and opportunity in the moment is everything,
level.
Holy crap.
It's such a different level.
It's so different. Everything from the guard to the pace. One of my biggest issues coming into boxing, my pace was so slow.
Right.
And then distance. You know, you can afford to kind of collide and then break and collide and break. And boxing's like, no.
You got to like be precise with the range, right?
Range is everything. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it applies to MMA too. For example, you got to be in range to strike, to take down, whatever.
But it's
but
not
you
as
can
precise.
afford to. Yes, exactly. A lot of the time you see guys create that distance, which again in boxing, a lot of the time you can't afford to have.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's very interesting.
I don't want to sound like a dick because I do sound like a dick if I say that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I haven't fought in boxing or whatever. Or
Right.
I haven't fought in Thai boxing, but I do agree with you. Like,
Yeah.
and it's not... It's even like the technique in how they're doing it. Like, I was talking to Crew Yo, right? Like, and he's had how many fights in Thailand?
Something
200
crazy.
and something, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's a famous dude in Thailand,
Yeah.
right? Like we were talking about, like the kicking. It's like a lot of people they don't kick properly. Like,
Yeah.
they kind of roll the thigh, but
Yeah.
not the whole hip
Yeah,
sort
no.
of thing. Like,
No.
and he said, look, maybe it's like they don't want to get taken down or whatever, but there's times when people are trying to kick the fuck out of someone's
Yeah.
leg and they're not doing it right.
Yeah. You could definitely see someone sharp stand out from the rest. But again, it's a different, totally different rule set and concepts. I guess that's the interesting thing about MMA because after all,
Yeah.
it's like stylistically, whose style is going to be the best. You know what I mean? And often you'll see guys who are very prominent in one style. But I think what's interesting now is you get a lot of guys who train in MMA. It's weird. Like, I don't know. I find that concept weird. Instead of training in a style and learning and then putting it together, they come in learning MMA. So kind of already putting everything together. Because ultimately, when you think about it, it could be its own style. I mean, when you break down components, yeah, exactly. But so yeah, that's kind of what's interesting. And I guess a lot of the guys, they learn it that way, so they might not necessarily refine certain techniques and stuff like that. So yeah,
who knows what the best way is? It probably just depends who's teaching you, right?
Yeah, it depends. I feel there's so many things. I feel with fighting, it's like one of those things where you got the technical aspect. Then the other thing is, to some extent, it's luck. You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of things going on, and then how a person's going to react on the day or how they're feeling. Like, I guess that's where fighting's really ruthless competitively, because like you got to perform at your best on that day. And the reality is that might not be your day. You know what I mean? You could beat this guy on any other given day, but that day, I don't know, for whatever reason, because your weight cutting process, because of bad night's sleep, because of other personal distractions, you're not performing at that time, but you're gonna get judged for that performance. Yeah, so that's the reality. And
that happens like when you just go to the gym sometimes.
Exactly. You'll see some guys that are killers, and then you put them in a competitive scenario and they can't perform. They get overwhelmed.
But I also mean just not your day. Like I used to get really down. Like I'd have a shit day and I'd get so frustrated. And one of the best advices anyone ever gave me, there's two of them. One was just recognize that is one of those days. Just don't get submitted. Just do that.
Learn to deal with it.
Yeah. And the other one was like kind of just don't train too much. Leave the gym wanting to come back, rather than leave the gym like oh my God, that's over.
That's definitely an attitude that I do like to take. But at the professional level, I mean, if every day you're having a bad day, you can't be like, I'm not going to train today. I'm going to come back and like, okay, I'm not feeling it today. You know what I mean? So one thing I always try to tell myself, and I think I read this quote from Ronda Rousey. She's like, I train to be my best on my worst day. And I feel like that's the best way to put it, because it's like, usually, and now I try to embrace those bad days when I'm exhausted or whatever, like things aren't going right, or I'm really stressed about something, personal situation, whatever. I try to like use those times to be very aware of what I'm doing to try to focus and not let that deter my goals.
And that's the day to train.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
When you've got all the complications.
Exactly. And it's often those times where I find they become far more valuable to you, not only as a fighter, but as a person.
Yeah.
To be able to overcome that. And so I had a lot of that in the last fight camp. There was, so basically, my partner Abdu, he's fasting for Ramadan, and so were my teammates. I was fasting with them. And that was the first time we all ever did a fight camp during Ramadan, fasting and having to perform. And it was a 5-week fight camp too, shortest one we've ever had.
You get used to it, right? You feel
I want to say that, but you don't. It's hard.
I ain't done a fight
camp. You get onto the routine, but the thing is, like, especially a sport like boxing, it's so much fast twitch muscle and explosivity. You know, it's move bang, everything's really fast. And when you're like barely eating and also have a very low carb diet because of cutting weight, because that's the thing, we weren't just fasting, we're fasting and trying to cut weight. So it was tough as hell. Everything is slower. It also, like, when you do cut carbs, it does affect the way your mind works as well. So, you know, you again, that irritability and making decisions really fast, it alters that. So that became a challenge. And there were a lot of days where I'm like, man, like, I'm just not here. Or there were days when I remember my team, like, I'd be sitting on the sofa waiting for the time to break fast, and I'm like, and they come and they're like, oh, you're sparring today, by the way. And I'm like, shit, my head was not in that. Not in the day, no.
Okay.
No water, no food.
Then that's different.
And so we shifted all our trainings to the evening. So we wouldn't eat or drink the whole day. It would hit 7:15. I'd hydrate and we'd train. So you don't eat a meal. And that was tough, man. That was really tough. And there were days, like, I don't know if I saw you that month at work, but I was fucking done. Like, there was some days, like, it's just like I was not there. I'm just, like, telling myself to hold it together and teach and be around people and try to be switched on, but I was not there. I was exhausted because I think our program, I was running on very little sleep, maybe 3 to 5 hours a day.
Yeah,
with
that's not
sparrings
enough.
every single day,
Yeah.
with eating like one meal a day because that's all we had time for.
Yeah.
Because I was trying not to wake up in the morning, otherwise I'd have too much broken sleep. I tried it, so just have one meal a day, and it was so tough. And in one way, that was like a whole other experience that I never went through before. But again, now I've gone through that, I'm like, damn man, now I'm gonna be doing camps on my usual routine,
Food,
eating, I have food
hydrated.
exactly whenever I want, and in a sense too, I enjoy that process because I feel you don't take things for granted, and I
Yeah.
like that.
We used to always try to handicap ourselves, which is essentially
Right.
what that is.
Yes.
And essentially, you know, like your father's situation was a handicap of sorts,
Yeah.
right? Like, so from day one of jiu-jitsu, we were doing weights before it.
Right.
Get tired,
Yes.
so you can't use strength.
Yes.
You know, and then,
Yep.
you know, like...
My coach would do that to us too. You do it on purpose.
Yeah.
We'd lift like 80% of our max.
Yeah, and then go
the next
train.
day he goes, by the way, you're sparring like a national team guy tomorrow or whatever,
Yeah.
and you know they're gonna come and try and take
But
your head
you've
off, but you have to
handicapped.
perform. You can, but what's interesting, but he would say it to us a lot later. So now I understand it. He's like, your body's not there, so now you got to work with your heads. And essentially it's true. You have to be very specific. And I always tell myself, I'm like, I'm so tired. So one thing I like to do is I'll calculate how many rounds I have to do and add up that amount of time.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, so 12 minutes of my life, I just have to be super switched on. I
Right.
can collapse after that,
Will
sit
you
down
die?
or whatever.
No. Will you vomit?
So let's
Maybe.
just go like super focused,
Yeah.
like be as smart as you can. You're tired, but you're only as tired as you're allowing yourself to be.
And just be good.
Yes.
As good as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we'd do weights. We'd put a rash guard on because you didn't
Yeah.
have to wear a rash guard. Then you put an ear guard on.
Yeah.
You put a mouth guard on. So
Yeah.
you can't breathe as good. You're hot. You're this. You're that.
Yeah.
So then when it comes to the tournament, you take all that shit off.
You're like, you're
You
good.
know, you're
yeah.
unleashed,
It's so
right?
easy.
Like it's
yeah.
like a bull out of a
That's
pen.
interesting. Yeah. I mean, I never did it that way. I guess it was intention, but I like how you guys did it.
Yeah.
With an
It's
intention.
like in the old days. I remember you go up the park, you'd see. You know, like football players, they'd be running,
Yeah.
and they'd have a rope tied around their back, and they'd be doing sprints, dragging a car tire.
Right.
It's the same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then going back to like don't leave the gym, the overtraining thing. At the same time, I was also thinking, and have always, the day that you don't want to go is the day that you should.
Yeah.
Because that's the day you'll get better.
Oh, for
because
sure.
everyone else doesn't
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And you have to overcome that. And cause like the reality is you're probably like, you know, you're not going to always compete on your best day. There's always going to be some circumstance, something,
Yeah.
you know, maybe you ate something bad in the morning or the night before. You've got like a stomach ache or you're exhausted for whatever reason or you don't feel hydrated and you have to learn to switch on because I've seen how things like that, how they've distracted fighters and instead of kind of going with the flow and learning what to do, they attach to those things like, oh man, I feel tired and I feel tired because I didn't eat enough, and they just attach themselves to that and that drags them down. It's a small issue that doesn't need to, but they almost let it attack their mental.
Yeah,
And then it
right.
goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm particularly interested in the whole mental aspect of everything because I really do believe
like
that's the make it
35%, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like if you stop training for like, I mean, that's another extreme for like, I don't know how many weeks and you go on and fight. I think if you're a pretty seasoned fighter with an experience,
Should be
again,
okay.
yeah, if you can get that right mindset and switch on, I'm not going to say it's going to go easy or go well or you'll perform to a standard you want to, but I do believe it's still, again, that's another extreme, right? But like, to see a person's mental willingness. And that's one thing that my boyfriend Abdu, he would tell me in early fights, he'd always be like, the person that's going to win is the person that wants it more. So how much do you want it? And when you're tired, how much do you want it? And like, I'll just go through that and I'll have that conversation with myself. I'm like, oh, I'm tired or whatever. And I'm not feeling it today or whatever. But I'm like, oh, no, but you can't afford to think like that. You know what I mean?
It's not an option.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just go with it. And so sometimes now when things go chaotic and wrong, almost like this last fight camp, and again, there was a lot of personal life stress and physical with the not eating and stuff like that. That was very difficult. And I just kept telling myself, like, this is what we wanted. You know what I mean? This is what's going to make you perform on the night. And even when I got sick, like, I really like the practice in the Muslim culture. They all say Alhamdulillah. So it's like, thank God for whatever, you know, and it's for everything in that moment. When things are going wrong, and I just kept saying that to myself and just kept repeating to myself, like, you know, you're sick, you can't perform. It's okay. This is what's meant to happen. It's all setting you up for what's meant to be and how it's meant to go.
Yeah,
so just
everything
trust that
happens for a
process.
reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I did that. And I feel like on the day, I'm like, you know, the camp went exactly how it was meant to. You gave it your all. You dedicated. You put your time to it. You know, you won it. So now let's just go. Let's just enjoy it. So all the hard work was done. Yeah.
So, like, you've had how many professional fights?
Actually, now for MMA 2, and then for boxing, that was my 3rd fight.
Okay, so 3. Like,
Yeah.
Like, what's the plan? Like, you want to fight for a title and then fight for another title? You want to be
one thing at a
the
time.
world champion of a division? Like, do you think like that, or?
I mean, I guess the way I see it, I'd like to be the best version of myself as a fighter, as a person in the ring, and also out of it too. So as long as I'm making that progress as a person, but that's always, I'm really particular about that. Again, I have to be very mindful of injuries and stuff like that. So I used to put a timeline on what I want to do or how long I want to do this for. But I personally think once you do that, that's kind of like, you're kind of admitting defeat to yourself. Like, I'm only going to go this far. So I feel really good now. I feel really strong. My next fight should be August or September. The date's not confirmed yet. November is going to be the bigger one for WBA title, I believe. But I'm going to confirm that it will be with WBA. But it will be a title shot for sure.
Yeah.
And my eyes are just on that prize now.
Yeah.
And from there, let's see what we could do. And I always like to map out what's possible in my team and what's realistically achievable. And
but also, like, because I was looking at it, like, I don't know, I sometimes sort of, like, I stay in touch with Australia and read that sort of news. And there's this Australian girl that you've probably heard about her. Elaine Bridges or something like that.
Elaine Bridges. Sounds familiar.
But she won an IBF.
Yeah.
Right. She was getting flack for sort of like wearing lingerie into the weigh-ins, and she's kind of like, oh, this is.
Is she like tattooed?
Yeah, I think
I might have seen her. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm saying her name wrong. It's not Elaine. It's an unusual spelling. But
okay.
But she's won a title.
Okay.
IBF.
Yeah.
She's had 9 pro fights.
Yeah.
Ibane or something.
So the interesting thing about
Ibane
boxing
Bridges.
and with women in particular
There's
is
no depth, right?
Yeah, the
So
divisions are pretty
nothing's
shallow.
impossible.
So my chance to have some big opportunities can happen really fast
That's
if
what
I stay focused.
Right?
And it's like, for example, like Abdu in his division, fighting at, I believe it's 69.8 or 68.8. I can't remember. But
Is that all he looks
for
he
him,
looks
man,
as big as me.
Yeah. No, he walks around like 70 kilos. Yeah, but he's
You got
different
skinny
build.
legs?
No, I don't think
He
so.
looks big.
I think it's his body type.
Right.
Yeah, his forearms are literally like that. Are like the size of my calf. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's where he gets all his power because it's all in the forearm.
Right.
But for example, for him to work his way up to a title shot or a big one, he's got to get through a decent amount of fights.
Yeah.
You know, you're looking at like 10 to 15, sometimes even more.
Right.
And yeah, for me, I could probably be put on the line for an international
3 more, 4
yeah,
more?
with a couple more fights. So that's pretty awesome.
I'm looking at her record now. She's had 9 fights. She's lost 1.
Yeah.
And her last fight, she won the IBF female bantamweight title.
Yeah.
She fought her 6th fight was a loss for the vacant WA female bantamweight title.
Okay.
And the one before that was a vacant Australian female super bantamweight title.
Okay. Yeah.
So then that was her 5th fight.
Yeah.
So it can happen sort of quickly, right?
No, for sure. Things can change a lot. That's why I just want to stay focused and
She went from fighting that at the Bankstown City Paceway, where they run the horses,
yeah.
to her next 4 fights in England. Like, you know, and her last one was at, you know, a massive arena in Leeds.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things can change fast. So yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, totally. So it's exciting to see what could be done with this, but yeah, I'm enjoying it.
That's
So
cool.
that's the most important thing.
And it's nice you're going on this journey with like with your partner as well, right?
For sure, yeah.
Is he got aspirations to?
Yeah.
He wants to be.
He loves boxing.
the
He
top.
pretty much like he grew up in a really small town, Corsica. I don't know if you know.
Mm.
Yeah, so France, but kind of not France. I know they
It
usually
was
don't.
Italy at one point.
Oh
I think.
yeah.
I
Okay.
think-
Well,
I think
apparently it
Corsica
looks more like Italy. I haven't been yet, but
Yeah.
so yeah, he pretty much left to pursue the dream to box
Wow.
and came over here.
Right.
So to do that. So he's
Yeah.
pretty much everything in. Yeah. Which is cool.
Yeah.
If anything, I feel like in terms of like mentality and also just the art of the sport, I feel like I learned so much from him too, which I'm really fortunate for.
Mm.
He's one of those guys with really high fight IQ, and his ability to read an opponent and readjust the strategy and make things work is just amazing. He's also very coordinated and just an athlete. So yeah, it's really great to watch him train and be around that and get his advice. So
I
when
always seen him running around.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
he's
man,
always
yeah.
running, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a beast. He's got a very competitive mindset, and that's what's very interesting. Because when I met him, he's so competitive in everything he does. He's one of those guys like, you try to play a game or whatever,
He wanna win.
he wants to win. Yeah, but it's like in his nature, and he does it in a not ruthless or aggressive way, but in just it's who he is.
Yeah.
And he'll make total fun out of it. And if he loses, he won't be like, oh, and like kind of have a sob story about
Yeah.
it. He'll just get on like, you beat me, but I'm gonna get you back next time. That kind of attitude, you know. So it's all fun and games,
Yeah.
which is great. But he's so driven to succeed in everything. I find that that's one of his star qualities, and it's. When I saw that, I realized how not competitive I am, because I'm like, okay, sure, you want to win, sure, that's fine, I'll let you win, you know what I mean? And like
Good on
passive
you.
all the time. I was one of those ones where when I'd spar, if I hit my sparring partner too hard, I'm sorry, are you okay? Like, and I'm like, I would even hear him being like, it's boxing, you're meant to hit them, like shut up and just go. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's
I have
like,
that.
you know what I mean?
I hit someone at
yeah,
sorry,
you have to like switch on.
Yeah.
And I'd struggle that because again, I'm not like a person like I want to win. It's more like I do things for myself. You know what I mean? I do it because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I realize like in fighting, I think you'll only get so far if you don't have that. And when I started to realize that, I'm like, you need to have that hunger
You
and
find
drive
it
to
somewhere.
win. Yes, because it's a fight. At the end of the day, someone's trying to take your head off. You should want to take
Well,
theirs
that's who
off
wants
first.
it more, right? Like,
Yes.
because if when two people are evenly matched, and one day that'll happen.
Yeah. But that's where I struggled with that. I struggled to switch on. And again, from a kid, my mindset was never to try and be a winner. So that was definitely super tough. And I had to like find ways to switch on. And now I feel I've got it. And I switch myself on. I'm in that mindset. And for me, it was to create more of a game-like atmosphere with things. Like, I want to hit and not get hit.
Yeah.
But very seriously commit yourself to that.
But it's super
And
fun
that's
when
just
you do
how I see
that.
it. Exactly.
Especially the not getting hit back.
Oh my
That's when
gosh,
it becomes
totally.
fun.
It does. And I
Yeah.
find taking that attitude has helped me too to take emotion out of everything I do.
Yeah.
For example, you see when a fighter gets hit, you see when they switch on and they're like, I want to get you back, but in an emotional way and kind of charge at someone else. That's really dangerous in boxing.
Right.
And you can often see it happening. You could see when a person comes at you like that. And it's dangerous, again, because you're not making rational decisions anymore. You're making emotional
That's
ones.
what,
so you could
Mayweather
get
did
lucky,
to
but
Hatton.
right, provoking, exactly. Mayweather, that's where he's really smart. And like all those guys at that other level where they try to provoke you and stuff, even well before the fights, like Tyson Fury is really good at that too. It's all mental
He's so
warfare.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
hilarious. Have you read his book?
No.
You should. It's a good one. It's a good one.
It
But
would
he
be.
basically mentioned about this time when he was over somewhere. I think he was doing a press conference with somebody else, or I can't remember why they were in the same room, but they ended up in the same sauna together,
Yeah, right.
doing a sauna session. And
But that's an
apparently-
opportunity if you're the right person.
Right, but this is before I believe he had any plan to fight Klitschko, but kind of like it was in his mind that he was.
Yeah.
And I think he was going to go into the sauna. Apparently some of Klitschko's guys were out there and they were like, oh, by the way, just to let you know, Klitschko has to be the last one to leave the sauna. Okay. He's like, all right, go in there. So he goes in there slowly, one by one. All the guys start leaving, and apparently they were both in there, like ready, like turning red, like ready to faint. He said he was like ready to pass out, and he did like, but he was just willing to be and stay there until he's like, you know, knocked out cold.
Yeah.
So, or hot, I should say. But, and finally Klitschko gets up and he's super pissed and leaves the sauna. And for him, like, that was the win. That was the first win. You know what I mean? But
well, in his mind,
yes.
He's mentally stronger than him.
Yes, exactly. And he already starts there. And it's like all these things. And again, I mean, I guess I haven't had the opportunity to take it that far yet. And I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, it's interesting how that confidence, how it can really eat at you.
For sure.
How important it is. So I will say the confidence is earned in the fight camp. That's the time to put in the work. Again, not only physically, but mentally. Make sure your mind's in the right place.
Yeah.
So...
No, that's...
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. But again, I think what I love about all of this training and all of these sports, after all, is, again, it's what it's made of me outside of fighting. Because I feel like I almost learned all these things about life, but through that just was the process that I learned it. And it's almost like the other thing I love about it is kind of like when you're fighting with somebody, you... in that moment, like whether it's a sparring or whatever, you got someone coming after you and hitting you, you can't avoid it. You can't run from it. You have to deal with it. Almost, and that kind of applies to problems in life.
Definitely.
Because often we can avoid problems. We have that luxury, or we think it's a luxury, but it's actually not. And that's where we have all these things where we put aside and they eat us up in other ways. But in fighting, you can't. You got to deal with it. And
well, everything's a choice as well, right?
Yes.
Like, it's a choice. Do I get hit and get emotional? It's a choice. Do I, like, I don't know, just, you know,
or
on
I
a
try
skill level,
to adapt
do I try
to the
this
situation,
or right, and then that definitely spills over into life, right?
For sure,
Someone cuts you off on the road, it's a choice to fucking scream or just like whatever.
Exactly. It's like, that's exactly how I see it. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
How can people get in contact with you? Like, is there's people looking after you sponsorship wise? Or?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm training out of the ring boxing community. So, you can find me over there. I'm pretty active on social media.
What's your...
on Instagram? It's Kirstie Ganaway. So Kirstie and then Ganaway. So G-A-N-N-A-W-I. Exactly. Like it's on there.
Stinky. G-A-N-N-A-W.
You're making things
A-Y.
up. Yeah, no. Yeah, so you can find me on there. Yeah.
Cool.
So if anything, reach out. Google my name. I think a couple things will come up. So
nice one.
Yeah.
And like I see you doing stuff online for like Under Armour and people like that.
Yeah. I'm part of the local Under Armour women's team, which is super awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been great. They've made some great content together with me. And
give you some kit and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, pretty much there working with Santiago at Mind Lab. So he's definitely worth checking out for anybody who's interested to understanding more about brain.
Yeah, I'm very
mapping.
interested in that.
Yeah, it's definitely worth looking into. I feel it's helped me come to terms with a lot of things and just understand certain processes, which I think we might understand anyway, but this kind of just...
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You bring
like,
it up
just
to...
make sense of it.
Exactly, yeah. You could put it in words and start connecting dots and stuff, and I just find that very, very interesting. Again, I find the mental aspects of all these things the most interesting part, because I find that also develops you as a person,
for sure.
Right? So...
Well, the mental aspect is the only aspect that makes us different from... other primates that hang out in trees.
Well, yeah, but you say that, but it's surprising how many people don't bring that to attention and don't do much to work on that. Or they're not aware of it. I don't know.
Take it for granted, right?
Yeah, I guess so. So that's why I find it so interesting to talk about too, because it's the first thing that stuck out to me when I remember for my first fight, like, how the hell am I meant to deal with the nerves that are coming? I don't know what to do. Yeah. And nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
So you're like, I don't know what to say. Yeah.
Everyone knows how to jab.
Yeah. Kind of same like
no one knows how to deal with the shit going
kind of like the nutrition stuff as well. I'm like, so how should I eat? They're like, just eat like this. No one asks why. I see guys not drinking for like 3 days straight, but that's normal. Everyone's doing it. And it takes you a moment to be like, wait, no, that's not normal. That's kind of like weird, and start looking into it. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Super interesting.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul.
Cheers.